positions of higher order components. I don't know if you know this concept, but it's a functional code, and this really didn't work in Flow. It just kind of tried to infer everything, like one higher order component with like wrapping a component worked fine. Second wrapping a component worked fine, but then composing these two, like no. And so we tried it in TypeScript. We were also like a little bit struggling with that, but we actually like found some way how to do it. We introduced some like boilerplate, to the code, but at least we knew that it's possible. In flow type, what was the trickiest part, that if you made some like mistake, or if the flow type wasn't able to infer the type, it just failed silently, didn't tell you. That's the worst thing what can happen. In this code, there is a lot of things you can put, in a right order, but if you don't do it right, it will tell you. It will fail, it will just inform you, you have an error, and with pretty good error message how to fix it. So yeah, we figure out that, this is cool, and we can basically, we give a thumb up to the TypeScript. Then second thing, we try to compare the features. For a long time, flow type and TypeScript were kind of competing, implementing a little bit different set of features, but mostly the same. But when we did some analysis, we figured out that TypeScript is much further. It has like enums, it has some custom guard tags, it has mapped tags, and like all this fancy stuff. So yeah, second point for TypeScript. And finally, IDE support. We already used VS Code for our flow type-based code base, and when we tried TypeScript, it was like a blast. So, boom. First answered question. Great. Let's go to the next one, because it doesn't really matter what happens now if you are a growing startup. You are not just finishing the project in 1 month. You have to think ahead. So we really wanted to know, what the projection. We try to kind of predict the future. It's hard, to predict the future, but you can have some indicators how to do that. So first, we try to compare, what is the documentation and project roadmap of these two projects. Documentation was more or less the same, but the project roadmap was like completely different story. Flow type had absolutely zero, visibility into what's gonna happen. Whether like TypeScript, it has great roadmap, like every you can see what will happen like in very detail, the next 3 releases or something, and then some high-level roadmap. And also like the changelogs was a big deal for us. In flow type, you usually had like a changelog, like a bunch of like development nodes, like almost like a lot of Git history or something. And like in TypeScript, again, great job. Blog posts, snippets, examples, and yeah. So same old story, TypeScript. Then community activity. We analyzed, what's going on GitHub and Stack Overflow, and again, the number of issues opened, closed. It's kind of interesting, pull request, open, closed. Flow has more opened, very little closed. TypeScript has, not that much in progress, but a lot of closed. So it kind of suggested that, it's better. Also, like contributors, and especially Stack Overflow. It's like the main source of knowledge, right? If you don't know, you go to Stack Overflow. So like 60,000 versus like 2,000 was like no-brainer. And yeah, the last thing, the third-party definitions. Definitely typed versus flow typed. Just, I would repeat myself. It's a very easy decision. So by this, we basically were pretty sure that TypeScript has better traction, and it will be a better, like in long term, it will be probably better project, and more supported, more active community. So yeah, the second question answered. Let's go for TypeScript. The first question was, should we migrate? Wait a second, it wasn't that. Should we migrate now? Let me explain. Because this is kind of tricky part. It's not about TypeScript versus no TypeScript, or flow type in our case. Usually, how the real world goes. It's TypeScript versus 100 of other ideas, what to implement, how to spend your time, your very precious time. And like in our case, we had many ideas, to migrate our data scheme to UIDs, to design systems, CSS in JS, optimize data fetching, a lot of like engineering tasks, and also your product managers probably want to see results, want to see like some features delivered, the business value delivered to your customers. So you have to really prioritize. That's like the only way what you can do in a world when resources are limited and ideas are endless. So yeah, that's basically what we did. We considered all the ideas. We tried to evaluate them basically against questions like this, what can help us scale as the organization? What will help us the most with onboarding newcomers, as the company was growing? And like this was kind of like hard, very difficult process, so I won't go into detail, but at the end of this prioritization process, we figured out that TypeScript is the way. And so yeah, let's do it, let's migrate, yeah, right? Like write the code, TypeScript, everything. Not yet. I wouldn't recommend it. I think that preparation is the key of the success. Especially when you have a lot of team members that maybe don't know TypeScript yet. When you have some people, let's say, delivering new features, and at the same time you are migrating something. Once you start writing the code and doing the migration, you are basically running against the time. So the preparation, like the phase, when you try to figure all the strategies, is like a really important one, and you are not that pressured by the time yet. Again, in our case, the main question was, what is actually the migration strategy? We had flow type, we have untyped JavaScript, and we wanted to achieve like TypeScript. It's like quite easy, but you can have a lot of ways to it. So first of all was how to migrate the flow type to TypeScript, and we are thinking whether it should be a gradual or like total all-in-one migration. So when we thought about gradual one, we saw some benefits that you can actually like start doing it like slowly, but at the same time we're totally not comfortable about like free technologies next to each other. Webpack, it can handle it, but all the consequences in the real world, what to do, when you have to change some file, and it's in like flow type or untyped JavaScript, what are, it has a lot of dependencies, so like, should you migrate all of the dependencies or something? We just didn't want this to happen. Also, you will probably step on each other's fingers with your colleagues, so like basically we came to the conclusion that the flow type to TypeScript should be like in one batch. Also, like the syntax is quite similar, so we already had some scripts prepared for like automatization of this process, so we are pretty confident that we can do this like in one batch. Yeah, the second part, like all of the rest of the code base, which was like completely untyped, we didn't wanna do like anything in the first phase with it because there's like a lot of work. So we decided to actually leave this to some like next phase where we would gradually adopt it. Basically how we did it, till now. And then also important question, how many people to involve? You can basically put like on the scale from one person to like everybody, and we've decided to choose rather smaller group of people. It was free. All of us had previous experience with TypeScript, so we wanted to like iterate quickly, collaborate closely, and yeah, like with some like seniority, so we can actually like do it right and do good decisions. All right, so that was the first part, how to make the migration phase. Then you have a lot of like technical stuff. I won't go into details, but there are like TS config, build pipeline. Nowadays I think it's much easier. Nowadays you have Babel 7 which handles it for you. The linting, some global definitions, some third-party libs, going through the node modules or package JSON and like figuring out what is covered, what is not. Probably like most of it should be. Also like your like specific things in your app. For us it was like the state management, higher order components and its composition. But it might be some router, API layer, controller, something like that. You should really figure out in advance how to approach it. Do some proof of concept so it works. It won't backfire on you and yeah. And also you should learn. You should really like read through the documentation. You should learn all the features of the new technology. You should figure out, wrap your head around what do you want to use, how you want to use it. Yeah, there are some like core concepts. The TypeScript has interface and type. It's almost the same, but it isn't. So you have to make the decision how to do it. It's a bad idea that half of your team would do it one way and other half the other way. So yeah. So basically, you should really absorb all the knowledge, but at the same time, you should kind of think about the team, that the adoption in the team is limited. You cannot just overwhelm them. You cannot just, let everything, And so we decided that, for example, we want to adopt enums, from the beginning. It's quite easy concept, but we didn't want to start typing our Flux action dispatcher. Because that's something we didn't do till now, and we felt that it would be like too much new stuff. So we also like had some roadmap how to adopt the technology, like in some phases that there are some concepts that we like, but we are not ready for them yet. All right, so that's great. We are prepared. We have a plan, and now just do it. So just recap, replace flow type with TypeScript, don't touch any untyped JavaScript, write some comprehensive guide, the findings, and then teach basically your team, and be fast as possible, because the other team members are working, and you will have conflicts if you are slow. So yeah, cool. Not so much. That's when things started to fall apart a little bit. Yay, migrate all the things. So first we did was just renaming all the JavaScript files to TypeScript, and then doing all the automated changes to migrate the syntax of flow type to TypeScript. And then we committed it, and then we lost all the Git history, all the files. That's not really good, the project is 4 years old, and you don't really want to do that. And yeah, you just didn't know before, so we just figure it out. Like luckily, there is a solution. First, you have to rename the files, commit. Then do the editing, changes and commit. And then, it works. But not everywhere. For example, in GitHub, it doesn't. In GitHub UI, you still don't see the history. So yeah, there is some ongoing issue open on GitHub, not really going anywhere. So don't be scared that in GitHub you don't see it. In like your Git CLI or some tools, like in IDEs or some software, will probably use this parameter and do it correctly. Cool. So we migrated all the files, and then we ran the type for the first time, and kind of shocked, to be honest. There were like so many errors. We just, were like, what? This must be an error. We knew that flow type wasn't perfect, that it wasn't, really, covering, our backs, but we just didn't know that it just leaked so many errors. So, we are sad about it, but we had to go one by one and basically fix it all. It's also, yeah, I forgot to mention that the initial estimate was 3 people in 1 week. for this like first, initial phase. We thought that the preparation was good and we will do just some few magic, like scripts and, like done. Well, not anymore. Then we also had some like developer experience issues. As I said, we are mixing the TypeScript and JavaScript, and if we imported some component from the JavaScript files, which used like some functions from already typed code, the TypeScript, even it was JavaScript, tried to help you, but it just wasn't able to help you like in a good way. So it's shown some errors, so we had to again figure out like what's going on. So we basically came to a solution. We just declared all our React components to be like having like any properties, so it will just skip the type checking. And it worked, the errors were finally gone, but like 2 days later we figure out that when we used this great ID functionality to go to definition or declaration, instead of arriving at the final destination of the component, we arrived exactly here. And I mean like exactly here, like at this code, like it opened, the ID opened the global declaration, and yeah. So we didn't want to give up on our developer experience, so we have to again like reevaluate it, resolve it again. So like basically we dropped this code, this declaration, and we found a workaround for that, importing it, then typecasting it to any, and it was like really, it's not a nice code. You don't want to do that. But for some phase before we migrated, we felt okay with it. It was documented. We had like some comment in the, just next to the code, so we are just kind of okay doing that, and we didn't find any like better way. Whew. So 1 week it wasn't. It was like 3 weeks and a lot of eaten chocolate. Yeah, we are tired, sleepy, moody, and grumpy, but we survived. But like what happened, we kind of forgot to communicate with outer world. We were just doing the migration, we were fixing the errors one by one, like all the things, we are so overwhelmed that we forgot to communicate that it's slipping. So it was it's not a good thing for your colleagues, for your managers, that they don't know what's going on, that they had some estimate and now it's not. It's okay if things got delayed, but you have to just communicate it exactly at the moment when you know some new information. Yeah. So then it was okay. We earned some like eternal glory from all the company, and it was done. Oh, wait a second, it wasn't. There was the next phase. So now basically what's the situation? We have TypeScript and untyped JavaScript, much better than flow type and untyped JavaScript. And the goals basically was to migrate everything to TypeScript and educate the team so anybody can contribute. So they adopted the new technology. They basically can spread the knowledge themselves because remember the growing curve of the employees. Like if you onboard like 2 people like in a month or something in your team, then like everybody should be able to contribute and educate each other. So we followed like very simple rule, the Boy Scout rule, saying always leave the code you are editing a little better than you found it. It's a nice one. So we basically wanted like anybody touching some untyped code to spend a little bit more time and convert it to TypeScript. It was a great time to practice, to go through some like pitfalls, and yeah, so this was good. I think like the most important part here was to keep the team motivated. again, there were like 3 people doing the TypeScript like very extensively and like really loving it and studying it, but not everybody in your team is like a TypeScript geek. You have to take it into consideration. Someone just want to do I don't know, some CSS or some animations, some shiny things, and they don't really care that there is a TypeScript and there are like generics and like all this like crazy stuff. So you have to keep your team motivated and like really, so they really believe that it's a good thing. Even they don't really from the first sight they don't really understand that. So like I posted in Slack some like celebrations whenever we reach some like new percentage milestone. We converted some new part of the code base, so that was like great. It kept the atmosphere going. And also like along the way you find some new issues, and you should really be very quick about it, because if you don't resolve the issue, you basically introduce some technical debt. If you introduce it like slowly, the people get demotivated, you lose the alignment within the team, then suddenly you don't have the rule of thumb for certain scenarios, and the people in the team will start to do it just like very randomly. And yeah, so just whenever something show up, we just made a very quick ad hoc meeting when we really try to figure that out and make like very good, very fast decisions. It's hard to do it like quick and like precise, but just invest the time in it. Also, be prepared that people come to you and say like, hey, this type is broken, it's clearly not working, again, we migrated and it's still, not just, I can say that 99% of the, of the time, TypeScript is not broken. It's, like the gap in, knowledge or some, like you have to do some mental shift, if you wanna start using like very well typed JavaScript. So again, you should just be there, for the people, explain, and just pair program, on the code, and yeah. Also, it's really important to set up clear expectations. It's again, like communicating that now you might be a little bit slower. And that's not what your product manager or like even like whole company, they don't want to hear that like, okay, so now you are you adopted this technology just to write this slower, like what? So you have to like really explain that it's investment, now we will do it for like next 3 months, and then it will pay off. There are great statistics. There is a great talk from Airbnb also talking how they migrated their code base to TypeScript, and they have like some solid data. They did some analysis of their bug reports. So like there is like really something like 38% of the bugs were preventable by type system. So you can use this argumentation, and it's pretty clear. Nobody wants to make bugs. All right, so it's time to kind of wrap it up. So how it went? Again, the timeline. Now we can zoom. So we started the migration somewhere, 2018 August. It was like half of the code base was typed, half wasn't. And then in like maybe half year, we were able to have the adoption something like 85%. And like nowadays, the GitHub stats says 93, but it's basically 100 for us, because the rest which is untyped is some legacy code which is basically dead and we don't use it. So that was like pretty cool, and I was like amazed that the team really worked on that, and we were able to adopt it like very quickly. What do I think that went really well? I think like the initial phase, how we presented the technology, we had buy-in from both the team and the management, and I think it was really important, because when you have some like struggles and hard time, you still have like the solid foundation for it, and you don't get like easily blamed, or like the decision is not changed if you have the buy-in. And also then in the last phase, the gradual adoption, I think the atmosphere in the team was great. We were just supporting each other, and people basically, it was like complete opposite of the times of flow type. Everybody was complaining, you know, it was like flow type, our F word, you know. And now with TypeScript, we are just happy. So that's great. And what could be improved? Like the preparation phase is a little bit questionable. It's like really, really hard. You know, you don't know what you don't know. So, but still, I think we should get even more deeper into the technology. Try a few more cases. You know, try a few more proof of concepts, and maybe we would just explore the pitfalls earlier. You know, and also. Yeah, that's basically the outcome of the first one. When it got delayed, you know, we should have just communicated it better, and it would be like completely fine. So yeah, overall, our confidence in the code have never been higher, and we are happy we did it. Woo. Thank you. Right, so can we go with Q&A, and if there are any questions?
How much experience of your senior engineer had before you started migration?
Yeah, that's a good question. I personally did like 2 months project. It wasn't like definitely not the scale of this like our product board project. So, but I had some ideas of the concept. I think the other colleagues had some like similar experience, maybe like 1 year of experience, but with always like with small projects.
So just small POCs and experiments.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you could name one single concept in TypeScript that was always problematic to explain to the rest of the team, what would it be?
Well, I think generics.
Okay.
That's yeah, that's always like maybe it's not like problematic once someone learns it, but it's kind of I see the barrier to adopt it. That people are scared, you know. That
that was my question.
Yeah. They see that they don't want to deal with that. It's just weird, you know.
Try and avoid and
that's
it. Yeah.
But once I learned, I taught them how to do it. I think it was like suddenly kind of okay.
Okay. Thanks.
I have one about adoption because you mentioned before that during the first phase you deliberately choose to not type some complex things, let's say, to ease the adoption inside the team. But now with newcomers, what's the approach instead? Do you just find people who is more accustomed to use TypeScript so they can learn this stuff easily, or you just say, okay, you don't write action in your first 6 months because it's just too much to learn?
Yeah, actually, great question. I was thinking whether I should put this into the talk. It was a little bit more technical, but exactly about typing the actions, I think maybe 5 months later, we actually adopted that. So basically now we have almost like end-to-end coverage of all the concepts. And that's an interesting thing because we used tooling very well to make the adoption easier. We've written our own TS-lind rule to check whether the actions are like well typed. So that was also a like good idea. I would recommend you to really use your tooling. It can really make it easier. You know, like the set up linter is like the basics, but also you can go even like step further, and for your own concepts, you know, just write some rule. It's like at first it's a little bit, you know, you have to know how to work with AST, abstract syntax tree, but it's kind of easy to adapt it, and then you can write the rule in like 3 hours, and it helps you to really like do like some meta meta check, basically, the check of the TypeScript check, basically. I don't know if I answered your question, sorry.
Not really, because sorry, maybe I explained it not good, let's say. But I was mostly interested in knowing how you approach new entries in the team today, now that you have this code in your codebase. Meaning, when you were doing the migration, you chose not to type the actions because they were too complex to understand for people that never saw TypeScript before. But now you may reach the same situation with new people joining the team.
Oh,
so
okay.
how do you handle this today?
Yeah, I think it's actually easier nowadays because it's some pattern. Then you can nowadays, when we adopted this pattern and most of the code base is actually using it, the new person can look at some similar code and get the idea how it works.
Okay.
So that makes it much easier. But I agree that more you adopt more technologies, more custom technologies, is definitely harder to onboard new people, and you kind of have to make some balance there also.
So during the prioritization part, how did you buy in management? Because usually this basically is a huge blob of tech debt, and usually management never sees the value of solving tech debts. But this is something that actually took 6 months to work on. So how you were the first thing to do in the prioritization board with your management when they had lots of new features on stuff that would bring many dollars towards you did?
Yeah, actually, I started to prepare, the position for this much earlier. I was maybe in the previous year, whenever I saw something that flow, was kind of bad, I usually said something like, the TypeScript would be much better. So I was planting these little seeds. So it was over time, getting some support. And then I don't know what was the exact argumentation, but it was something like we are not confident in the code base, people are frustrated. And also I think what really helped was the very low estimate that we can do it quite fast, which kind of backfired after, but they were like, oh, okay, this doesn't look so bad,
Few days,
Okay. So, do they see the value now? I mean,
Yeah.
on the management side?
Yeah.
Can they pursue today?
Yeah. Also, we are kind of lucky that our CDO is very clever guy, and he used to code. Now he doesn't, but when he's involved in the technical decisions, he's very he sees the value of investment in the technology. It was great.
So in the first phase of the migration, you decided to allocate 3 people for that. Would you make the same choice if you could go back in time? Do you think it was a wise decision?
I think so. I think it was okay. I think it was great that we could really collaborate very easily. I think once you have 4 people, you lose some information. So I think this was a good decision actually.
So you didn't suffer much the conflict with the rest of the team that were working in JS, in plain JS?
There were some conflicts, but it was manageable.
Okay.
It wasn't that much of a pain.
All right, thanks.
When you were using Flow before the migration, you said that you did have 90% of types and the 10% when you basically don't have a clue what's happening. And if I understood correctly, this it was one of the points that Mov used our TypeScript. After the migration, did this solve this point, or if not, how do you manage this technically now?
I'm not sure if I understood correctly. What was your take on the 90% versus 10%?
It wasn't a flow, right?
It wasn't
The
coverage of the code base. It was some abstract number, that like in 10% of some like cases when we were relying on the typed code, it failed. So, but actually, like if I understood it correctly, that was one of the main.
You manage now there's a point in TypeScript when you receive data from outbounds when you are not sure of the types, and you must check the type correctly in order to.
Well, it wasn't like that. It was like we basically had we thought that we have it covered, but it just didn't work. So like if we have the information that something is not very well typed, we can at least like work with that information and not rely on that. But the problem was if we were relying on something that didn't work, we were feeling uncomfortable. Does it make sense?
There was any point when you did you have to use any type of TypeScript when you aren't sure of the type?
Yeah, actually, I think it's actually a good trick, let's say, do some. Yeah, that T-shirt says it all. Like especially if you have some complicated function doing some like low-level data transformation or something like that, and you have these functions covered with tests, you don't have to really test cover the internal implementation of that function. Like in that migration process, it can help a lot, because sometimes the internal details when you are using some like intermediate mutations of the variables or some like nasty stuff that functional people don't like at all. But if you do that, then I would recommend to somehow use any. And but what really matters is like the interface. The input and output should be every single time like very precise.
Yeah, so it's more or less you decided to go for a one batch transition, but it's not a one batch transition using any, let's say, to go to top down more or less as an approach. So you said the whole code base should go to TypeScript, but with as any, it's more or less like untyped JavaScript. So
yeah.
It's a sort of mediation between.
Like our strategy was once we touched the file, we just migrated the whole file to like well typed TypeScript.
Okay.
In your code base, there was a unit test or integration test, and did you have to migrate them as well, or there was none?
Yeah, we actually also have the unit tests in TypeScript, but we don't have much tests, so start up.
So actually a very good talk, thank you. Because I actually have a question. Not one yet. My question is there something that you nowadays find yourself doing in a completely different way with respect to what you were doing before this migration? Is there something that you discovered thinking differently in static type checking terms with TypeScript that does not make any sense anymore today, and you change like something in the stack, or you mentioned tests, probably not a good example if you had not many, but maybe you find out that a whole class of tests you were used to do before are not really useful anymore. So is there something about that?
Well, let me think.
Well, we can take
I remind like one thing that's I don't know if it's related to, but I was really excited by introduction of React hooks, to React, because it helped the typing of the components. So that was awesome. I realized that like it's that's basically all the projects should really strive to enable the TypeScript as much as possible. But like regarding like the JavaScript TypeScript transformation, I don't think like myself I still have like a lot of ideas what to do better. but I think that wasn't like caused by the type.
So I have a question about colleagues after the migration started. So usually in a team there are a huge number of persons who are enthusiastic about new technology and probably they accept it as as a super duper good thing to migrate to TypeScript. So let's say no effort was required to to have them on the board of the migration. But sometimes people who are very, for example, skilled on a particular topic, they don't really want to change the way the company does this because they may think that that their skills and knowledge may be jeopardized by this new technology.
Mm.
So how, let's say, you handled those kind of people if you had, and let's say, what is the way, in your opinion, to take them on board to go together? I saw that you did some examples of, let's say, the social part of this, so trying to make them feel on the on the board by socializing with them. But for example, what was done on the company level to to encourage them and to set the objective also on the company side for them, not just on the social emotional sphere.
Yeah, so like we didn't have much, people being like really enthusiastic about untyped JavaScript and just resisting the change. So that was good, but like definitely when you introduce new technology, this can happen. I don't know. My advice would be just to spend extra time with the person to explain. We had like similar situation. We are now experimenting with CSS in JS. We don't have it like adopted yet much. And there's like one guy that is in the company for like 3 years. Like 3 years ago there were like 10 people. Now there are like 100. So he's like one of the originals and has like like this big influence. And he's like really against CSS in JS. It's a struggle. Because you don't really want to just tell him, you were doing it for 3 years in one way, and now you just, do it like our way. So, but like at the end, after all the discussions and explaining like the reasoning behind, I think it's healthy to have the mindset in a company that you don't have to always agree, but you should be able to commit to something if that's some like mutual agreement. So that's how we try to actually set up the mindset in our company, like in general, to kind of to commit even if you don't necessarily 100% agree.
And on the line of 2 questions before, do you think that maybe TypeScript didn't change how you work on the code, but did it change how you collaborate in the team? So you said, for example, you needed pair programming to explain better a new concept. Does the adoption of this mental shift did change something in the collaboration style, or nothing? Just
what I can
out of
think
curiosity.
of like right away is it definitely helped with reviews of pull requests. Suddenly you don't really have to think that much. If the things like match together. So that's like on the process side is like very helpful, and I think it was a great chance to try like pair programming, for example. We didn't do it much, and I think it actually forced us to start doing that, and I think it's a good practice. So
Thanks. Cool.
I think that it definitely made us collaborate better than before. Great, so many questions. I'm excited. No, like really, I was a little bit scared that it would be like, one lost hand up and nothing. But thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.